Anansi the Spider, and that time he pretended to be dead. Come on, boy. Welcome back, my friends. So a bit of a different sort of story today. I'm at the bar. It's got a bit of a Caribbean theme today after a party at the weekend, so I thought this would be a good time for a trickster story. That's right, it's Ananse, the spider of the Ashanti people. But this story isn't from West Africa, this is from the Caribbean. One day, long, long ago, in some other time that's not the same as our time, there was a famine in the land. And all the people were getting worried about the amount of food they had in the harvest. But for Anansi and his wife and his two little girls, they were all right. You know, they had a nice farm like this one, and they were growing all sorts of delicious things. They were growing yams, and they had some maize, and they had chilies and peas and all the good stuff. You know, life was okay. But Anansi, being Anansi, just the thought of famine was making him hungry, and he didn't like the idea of sharing, not even with his family. He always wanted more than his fair share. And also, Anansi didn't really like the idea of working very hard. He didn't like tilling the land, he didn't like weeding, he didn't like watering the chilies. That's why they're all yellow. So one day when it was time to get up and his wife was nagging him to get out of bed to do this and that and the other, he hit upon an idea. He's clever, Anansi, as well as lazy. He thought, well, why don't I just pretend to be ill? So when his wife tried to haul him out of bed 1, 2, 3 times, she said, what are you doing? Get out of bed. And he said, I can't really move, my love. I've got a terrible headache. What a headache. Yes. And how about, and a stomach ache. It hurt my whole body. My whole body is racked with pain. I don't think I can do any work today, my dear, lovely wife, sunshine of my heart. And his wife, being, very understanding, said, okay, you just rest today. Me and the girls will get on with the harvest and, doing all the work that needs to be done on the farm. And I'll tell you what, I'll bring you some nice breakfast in bed. How about that? And Anansi said, that would be really nice. It would be really lovely. So Anansi got his lovely, breakfast in bed and lunch and dinner too. And his wife in the evening asked him how he was. Does he feel any better? And Anansi said, no, I feel a little bit worse. And he was a good actor, Anansi. So the next day, his wife comes to see if he's any better, and he's puts on a great show. He's going, my stomach, a cough, a new continuous cough, and I've lost my sense of smell. You must have something very serious, said Anansi's wife. You just stay in bed, my dear love. We'll look after you. We'll tend to the farm. This went on another day, and then another day. But you see, Anansi had a bit of a predicament now. He could either keep pretending to get worse, or he could pretend to get better. If he pretended to get better, then he would have to do some work on the farm. So he decided to get worse, but then it would reach a point where he couldn't get any worse. He was going to have to pretend to die. That's it. That's it, he thought. So he got even worse and then called his wife and his children into his room and said, my wife, my dear girls, I think I'm dying. Nonsense, Anansi, said his wife. We will take you to the wise man that lives at the end of the village, the sorcerer, the doctor, the witch doctor, the medicine man, if you will. So off they went, Anansi hobbling, being propped up by his two little girls, coughing, staggering, pretending to lose his vision. And then he said, wait, wife, wait, children, you wait here. I must go in alone. If the news is bad, I want to be the one to hear it first. And solemnly, they all nodded, holding back tears in their eyes as their dear old dad, Anansi the Spider, hobbled on his 8 weary legs into the hut of the doctor, the witch doctor. He was in there a very, very long time. Enough time for me to have a drink. When he finally emerged and the sun was going down. He was white as a sheet, and he had a very sorry look on his face. He did not say a word all the way back to their home, all the way back to their farm. And then he called his wife and 2 girls around him, and he said, very solemnly, "My loves, the witch doctor said there is no other course of fate for me. I am going to die." "Daddy, is it true you're going to die?" And Anansi looked at his little child and said, "Yes, my sweet, I'm going to die. I love you, and I'm sorry." And with that, he drew in a last breath and then went, wait, wait, wait. The doctor had some instructions, some very specific instructions for my funeral arrangements. He said, let's see if I can remember this. It was very complex. He said, I am to be buried at the other end of the farm, you know, the far end of the farm where all the nice juicy yams are, just at the back. I'm to be buried there, in a shallow grave, just in a little matchbox like this, because he's a spider, in there, and it needs to be lined with nice soft a cloth, you know, so my spirit is comfortable to send me on my journey. And what else did he say? Yes, he said, it's so weird, but this is what he said. The witch doctor said, you have to bury me with a big pot from the kitchen. You know, the big one you use for the cooking. That needs to be buried in there, and a knife, and maybe a bag of rice and some hot sauce and some salt, and yeah, maybe my tobacco and a bottle of rum, maybe my record player and all my sort of reggae and blues vinyls. Put that in there. Yeah, that's it. And then my spirit can be laid to rest. I love you, my darling wife. And then Anansi went completely rigid, bulged his eyes, and then went all limp. There was great sorrow in Anansi's family, and all the village was called, and there was great ceremony. You know, there was music and rituals were done and flowers were cast, and Anansi, with great ceremony, was placed inside that little matchbox and laid to rest in a shallow grave at the sandy end of the farm by all the big juicy yams. Well, Anansi, he waited till nightfall when the moon rose over the farm, and he was sure that everyone was in bed. And then he just opened up his little matchbox and uncovered himself, and he took out the pot and his knife and took some water, and then he went and harvested some yams and some maize and a little bit of, you know, nice Scotch bonnet chili and all some good things, and he made a nice meal for himself, and he ate all that up, thinking how clever he was. He didn't have to share anything. And then he poured himself a nice drink of rum. Rolled himself a nice cigar, put some reggae on, and just had a good time smoking and drinking, watching the stars in the sky. There was loads of time before dawn. So this arrangement went on for a while. Every night, Anansi would rise from his grave, and he would harvest some of the vegetables that his family had been growing for so long on the farm, and that he had not really helped with whatsoever. And he would eat and eat and eat. He would drink some rum. He would smoke. He would be completely full, and then he would sleep all through the day, night after night, for a whole month, until eventually Anansi's poor, long-suffering dear widow and his 2 poor dear girls, they noticed that someone had been stealing their yams and their crop, their harvest. So what they did, they asked around the village a little bit, and then Anansi's brother, he hit upon a certain little idea. He would make a sticky man, a kind of scarecrow covered in sticky gum or black sticky tar, and set it right in the middle of the yam patch. Quacko's thinking was this. He thought that if the thief was to brush by that, at least they would get some tar on them, and then they would see in the village the next day who had the mark of the thief on them. So they set the gum man there. The sun went down that day, and as usual, Anansi the Spider came out of his little matchbox, and then he went to harvest some yams. But there he saw in the yam patch, shadowy, there was a figure, a stocky figure. And Anansi was suddenly very, very afraid. And he called out, he tried to make himself bigger and said, "Oi, this is my farm. Get off my land," you would say if you were from these parts. But the figure said nothing. "Answer me when I talk to you. Don't just stand there. You're so rude." But still, the figure said nothing. "You, answer me when I talk to you, or I will throw you off my land." But still, the figure said nothing. "Right." So Anansi came forward. His eyesight wasn't very good, you see. And he said, "If you don't get off my land now, or say something, or do something, I'm gonna punch you with my fist right in your stupid face." The man said nothing. "Right, you've asked for it," said Anansi, and he punched the gum man right in the face. But the gum man had somehow, the intruder had grabbed hold of his fist. And Anansi said, "Let go of me, because my left jab is much stronger than my right, and if you don't let go, then I'll punch you with this hand." The gum man didn't let go. So Anansi punched him with the other hand, but he stuck that hand as well. So Anansi said, "Right, I'll kick you." And he did, kicked him. That foot got stuck as well. So Anansi thought he would kick him with the other foot, and then with his other foot, and then his other foot, and then his other hand, and his other hand, because, you know, he's got 8 limbs because he's a spider. And finally Anansi said, "Right, I've been waiting for my bite, my spider bite. If you're not going to let me go, then I'll bite you. No? Right, take this." And Anansi bit the intruder right in the face, but his mouth was stuck fast. Anansi could only think of one last thing to do. He would squeeze the intruder to death, and with all of his strength, he squeezed the gum man and was stuck fast. At dawn, Anansi's brother Kwaku came through the farm, hoping to see if any trace of the intruder had been left, and there he saw. Was that his brother? "Anansi?" said Kwaku. Anansi turned and thought quickly and said, "I am Anansi's ghost." And Kwaku ran screaming into the village and alerted anyone and said, "I've just seen Anansi's ghost. I've seen Anansi's ghost." And everyone came to the farm and they saw there Anansi's ghost was stuck to the gum man, and some people were very afraid. And then Anansi's ghost said, "I'm Anansi's ghost. Pull me from the gum man." And they started to pull him, but then they realized they could touch him and he wasn't a ghost at all. They realized it was Anansi. And suddenly the villagers had realized what had happened, and Anansi's wife and children had realized their husband had betrayed them. And then people began to jeer at Anansi. They carried him on the pole all around the village, and people threw lemons at him like that. And he was very embarrassed. And finally, when people had got bored of this public humiliation, Anansi's long-suffering wife and his 2 frankly traumatized children cut Anansi loose, and Anansi scurried away into a hut like this, and he hid in the corner, and he wouldn't emerge for days. And that, my friends, is why spiders always hide in the corners of houses. It's because of Anansi that day. So that, my friends, was a trickster story, a very common type of story in world folklore. The trickster is a archetype, if you will, which is common across many world mythologies. In this part of the world, we've got sort of Finn McCool or Robin Hood, kind of tricksters like that, steal from the rich, give to the poor. Puck. We've of course got the Norse god Loki. We've got Hermes. In North America, we've got Wolverine. We've got Raven. We've also got Coyote. Now, Coyote is interesting because this very story I just told you, that is also told about Coyote. It's just swapped Anansi for Coyote. Really interesting. It just shows how mobile these trickster figures, these culture heroes are. There's another Anansi story from Ghana where Anansi, at the beginning of time, in deep time, when there are no stories and all humans and animals live together on Earth, because Nyame, the sky god, has all stories in a big pot. But Anansi casts his webs up to heaven and climbs up and barters with the sky god for all the stories, and he wins them. But on his way back down, he spills the pot of stories and scatters them across the earth. And that is why we have stories today. So thank Anansi the Spider and his web of stories, because we all benefit from them today. Because what would the world be without stories? If you want to hear how Anansi wins the stories, I did post it at the very beginning of this channel, a live telling from a live show. So I'll put a link to that.